Okay, so match 2 of the second Clash of Kings tournament begins with me, a Neonectar player, going against DSRed, who is playing Majesty Lord Blaster. Yes, if this seems familiar to you, I guess it shouldn't be all too surprising that basically a lot of people are using Majesty Lord Blaster. It is the best deck in the game. And that's kind of been my problem with this current meta. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna do nothing but bash on this current meta. I don't think it's the worst it's ever been. Like, I think it's tolerable. But I will say it's got to the point where I'm a little bit over it, and I'm really looking forward to the next set. So, my plan here is to get Squire out and attack with him so that I can send out my grade 2 intercept, basically. So I do that. Now, of course, you're probably thinking, should have attacked with the Vanguard first so I'd be able to get 2 attacks through, and that is correct. However, I was playing it safe. Of course, as you know, I only just suffered a loss, and so I'd rather play it safe and make sure I get my intercepts, and it rewards me anyway because I get the trigger I need in order to get a second attack through anyway. So I've managed to get 2 attacks through, and I admit I probably didn't deserve that. So that's the thing. This tournament, more so than anything else, is my opportunity to actually get some good games played with Neonectar so I can actually learn how they work, because as I've mentioned before, Neonectar is a brand new clan. So I still don't fully know everything about how they work. You need quite a few games with a clan, good games too, against people who are really trying before you can really fully get a feel for a deck. And this is what I'm trying to do here now. So yeah, that's basically my plan. And because of that, yes, misplays are plenty. But as I mentioned previously, my plan with this tournament wasn't necessarily to get an absolute ton of wins or anything. That was never really my plan. It would have been a nice bonus, but it was more so to try something different and see if it works. And because of that, I'm going to give a shout out to another channel. I mean, of course, check out DSRed. I'm pretty sure he streamed this card fight from his point of view, so I'll put a link to his. As usual, whenever I fight against anyone, I usually put a link to where you can find them in the description, so I'll keep doing that. But on top of that, I'm going to give a shout out to someone else, because my strategy with this tournament has been to play Neonectar, and I previously mentioned that I'm pretty sure someone else I knew also had the same strategy as me. And I can now reveal that person was Ride My Avatar, because, well, the tournament has been and gone, and I was worried about giving away that strategy before the tournament had started. But now that the tournament has ended, I don't mind so much. Yeah, I kind of had a feeling that was Ride My Avatar's strategy. He had been focusing a lot on Neonectar, and he's had a lot more luck with it than me. So if you want to see someone doing basically the same thing but having more luck with it, then I would definitely check out his games. So I'm going to put a link to his channel too, so you can do that. He recently cardfighted me as well, so if that's something you want to see, then there's that too. So basically, filling out my field with some grade 2s, sent out my Transriser clone. I'm just kind of filling myself up. Grade 2s, I'm deciding whether or not I want to use grade 2 Gene's ability. Like I said, I haven't had much experience with this deck, so I don't exactly know when to use that ability, like when it's most beneficial to. Because I don't really want to send out that grade 3, because yes, I know using that ability guarantees me the ability to have a grade 3 out of my field, which is great because grade 3s are really good. But I kind of didn't want to get rid of my intercept to do so. Neonectar is very defensive, and I'd rather keep playing on that defense. Now, would it have been beneficial for me to use that ability? Yeah, probably, but I'm still kind of feeling it out and kind of seeing how that goes. So my opponent, DSRed, has gotten his Majesty Lord Blaster out, as to be expected. You generally want to get that out within the first, well, basically, as your first grade 3, basically. So it's a very specific turn you want to be able to get him out, and if you can get his ability activated, which it looks like DSRed is setting up here, within the turn you rode MLB, then you're in a very, very strong position. So he's currently at 3 damage, which actually isn't that bad, right? Like, I can probably, if I can survive these next handful of attacks, then 3 more damage to him with only 2 more cards in his hand seems pretty doable. You know, I was feeling fairly confident at this point. I was like, if I'm ever going to win with Neo Nectars, now's pretty much going to be that time. So he activates MLB's ability and gets a draw trigger on top of it. But the cool thing about this is that, yes, whilst I'm taking 2 damage here, and I'm wasting a heal trigger, whilst I'm doing that, they've basically got an empty field and almost an empty hand. So I'm not doing awful. Like, I'm not doing great, but like, there's no intercepts or anything protecting his Vanguard, so I should be able to just kind of beat down on him now. So I send out Jean and Maiden of Rose, and they get a heal trigger they can't use, and I'm using Jean's ability to now send out 2 grade 2 Jeans, which allows me to intercept. Except I think I only had 1 left in my deck, so I could only call out 1, which kind of puts a massive dent in my strategy. I guess I wasn't thinking fully straight. That's the tournament nerves for you. Which is to be expected. Beating yourself up for that, you know, that's not going to get you anywhere. So I managed to get a stand trigger, which doesn't really benefit me that much. Again, stand triggers are definitely the trigger that I think are hardest to use and the ones I've had the least experience with. So I'm still not fully used to being able to use those either. So now we're both on 4 damage. So I do have a perfect guard and I have an intercept. So whilst I am in danger, it's not like I don't have any tools to protect myself with. And that Lien has really become a thorn in my side recently because that's giving them a lot of draw power. Them having the ability to just keep drawing cards like that and make sure that they can get the cards they need. So they're just kind of setting up their field, getting out a Starcall Trumpeter and counterblasting to do so they can get out a Blaster Dark. I'm interested to see why they went for Blaster Dark. I'm pretty sure they could have used that to get Blaster Blade out, and Blaster Blade I guess would have been more beneficial, but then again they wouldn't have had the counterblast to do so, so I guess it doesn't matter. Because of course Blaster Dark's ability only works in the Vanguard circle, whereas Blaster Blade works wherever you put him, which is kind of, it evens out I guess, because Blaster Dark gets more power when he's rolled in the Vanguard circle. I think of Javelins under him, so it depends. They have different strengths and weaknesses. So they're getting attack in with Magic Sword first. I wouldn't have done that. I would have attacked with Starcall Trumpeter first, because then it would have been easier to get both attacks through. But hey, I guess whichever works. I guess they were expecting me to block it anyway, so I guess it didn't really matter. So now they're going to attack with Starcall Trumpeter. That's going to go through, but I still have enough to keep going for 1 more turn. So basically, in order to win this, I'd have to... the odds are pretty against me, I guess. Because in order to win this, I would have to get rid of both of their intercepts and get 2 successful attacks in. And that's not even counting the possibility of them having perfect guards, which they more than likely have at least 1. So I'm going to use my Transriser clone. I keep calling them that. I'm sorry. But, I mean, at the very least, everyone should understand what I mean when I say Transriser clone, right? So, it's like Transriser, but they're Neo Nectar instead of Nova Grappler. Everyone knows what he does. So, yep. I'm just kind of weighing up my options, seeing what it is I need to do here. Trying to figure out what the best strategy is. I was considering using P-Knight to put my triggers back in my deck, because pulling some triggers could definitely help me, but then I realized I wouldn't have enough power to be able to get rid of their intercept, and I definitely need to at least do that. And the big problem with P-Knight is you need to find a way of shuffling your deck in order to actually benefit from those triggers, because if you can't shuffle your deck after using P-Knight, then those triggers just kind of stay clumped down at the bottom of your deck, and that's helping no one really. So you definitely have to find a consistent way to keep shuffling your deck is the problem. So I do have 2 intercepts, so I'm not in the worst position right now. I could definitely be in a worse position, but I don't have a perfect guard. If I had a perfect guard on top of those intercepts, I'd probably be in a better position right now. But I'm trying not to sweat it too much. We just gotta kind of see where things go. It's mainly the hand size of DSRed here that's really kind of scaring me. Nothing kind of scares me more than an opponent having a big hand, because if you have a big hand, then that means you have options. You have lots of different things you can do, and if you have a big hand, then chances are there's probably a perfect guard floating around in there somewhere too. So that's not great for me. But you know, and the fact that they have a full field right now basically confirms that they've pretty much won here, mainly because Manslaughter Blaster has that crit. I could draw just a lot of heal triggers and just tough it out, but when you get to the point where your best strategy is to just hope you get a heal trigger, then you've probably lost and you may as well just admit defeat, basically. You know, so they're gonna take out my intercepts and then they're gonna get an attack through like so, and I've lost. So yeah, not a great first fight of the round, but we'll move on to the second one and see if we fare any better. So now that they've won, they have to move over to a different deck. That is the rule set. The rule set is you have to move over to a different deck once you've won, because you have to win with 2 different decks in order to proceed. So they're using Oracle Think Tank, which is really, really interesting. Now, of course, you can change decks before you've won. As long as you win with both decks, then it doesn't matter. So I could have changed decks as well and switched to my second deck, won with that, and then changed back to Neo Nectar again. But I didn't particularly see a point to that. I guess my opponent would be less familiar with my other deck, so it could give me an advantage of surprise, maybe, because they've already seen me play with this deck for a card fight. So go for a pretty basic but solid first turn here. Getting Squire out, getting a successful attack through, using his ability on the rear guard to get a grade 2 Gene out. Fairly basic, fundamental stuff. If you can get that grade 2 intercept out on your first turn, then you're doing pretty well. They got a trigger, but I haven't, so that stops me from getting a second attack through. And it looks like they're using a Tsukiyomi deck, which is surprising, because Tsukiyomi is a pretty good deck. In fact, I'd argue it's probably still Oracle Think Tank's best deck. Either that or Coco, I don't know. But Tsukiyomi hasn't seen much play recently, not in a long time. I'd say it's one of the more underrated decks, because it's pretty solid if you know what you're doing, but I feel like everyone kind of just uses it as their go-to ride chain auto VP farm deck more than anything else, which is a shame. I think it's too good a deck to get that as its fate, in my opinion. I like seeing it get some tournament play, so that does make me a little happy. But of course it does also make me a little underprepared for it, because, well, like I said, most of the times I've gone against it in the past, especially recently, have been ride chain VP farmers, which is not a great way of using that deck, for reasons that should be pretty obvious. I mean, it'll probably get you some wins while you're VP farming, but I don't think that lives up to the deck's full potential. You know, I feel like you should be aiming for higher heights when using a deck like this. So they're just getting some attacks through and ending their turn. And so I draw my perfect guard. That's good. And I'm just kind of trying to decide. I go with the Transriser clone. See, the thing I don't love, and you'll just see it right there, is... And the thing I've never liked about Transriser is he's a great card. The ability to potentially call the top card from your deck is a very strong one, but it's the luck element I don't like. Because, yeah, if you get a grade 1 or 2, you can totally call it out to the field, and that's great, right? That's really, really beneficial. And that's the reason you want to run a playset of him if you are running him at all. Because getting so many just free superior calls is really, really good, especially because it doesn't affect your hand at all. But my biggest problem is that when you are unlucky, it really hurts. Because not only are you not able to call anything and not take advantage of its effect, but you're actually kind of harming yourself by shuffling your trigger further down your deck. You know, like, I would have got a stand trigger there, but I didn't because because my Transriser clone forced me to shuffle it back into my deck, which means that I wasn't guaranteed to get it anymore. And that can kind of hurt, you know? That doesn't necessarily make it an awful card. It's still a good card, and it's still one you probably should run 4 copies of. But man, the luck element can make losses more frustrating than they actually are. But, I mean, hey, I'm not in the worst position right now. My front row is 3 grade 2s. They don't really have much of a field, but they do have a giant hand, which, I mean, is part of the course for Oracle Think Tank. So, going back to my Perfect Guard, yeah, it's cool that I do have a Perfect Guard in my hand and everything, but the thing is, Perfect Guards are not quite that beacon of safety or the kind of sigh of relief you can breathe when you're going against Oracle Think Tank because, well, they're going to Silent Tom you. Any Oracle Think Tank player worth their salt is going to attempt to get their Silent Tom out at the exact right time to stop you from even getting the chance to use your Perfect Guards, which raises the question of, well, if you're going against an Oracle Think Tank, should you even bother trying to use the Perfect Guard, or should you just call it out to your back row and boost with it? And I think that's a very difficult question to answer because there is every chance they might just not draw their Silent Tom. Now, if they're a good Oracle Think Tank player, they'll at least run Silent Tom, but because it's a triple rare card, some players might only have 1 or 2 copies of it rather than a full playset. Now, of course, you're aiming for a full playset, especially if you are running Oracle Think Tank, but if you do only have 2 copies, and there are a few decent Oracle Think Tank decks that do only run a couple copies of it, then that definitely means there is the possibility they won't draw it at all. And so do you hold on to that Perfect Guard and hope they don't get to use their Silent Tom? Or that they're a bad player who just calls out Silent Tom before they even need it so you can just battle it? Or do you just go whatever and just place it down anyway? And I think that's a difficult question because it's very situational. I think it depends on the game, and I think the Oracle Think Tank players like using that to their advantage, having this kind of mind game of giving you an extra element to think about that you wouldn't usually have to. Because with every other deck in the game, if you have a Perfect Guard in your hand, then that's great. You know that you just need to keep a hold of it and it'll get the job done on its own, and it can save you. But Oracle Think Tank, it's not so certain anymore, and that's one of the things I like about Oracle Think Tank though, because it makes it very mind gamey. It is the thing. You know, it takes elements of the game that we usually really heavily rely on and makes you second guess them, which I quite like because it gives the game quite a bit of depth here. So DSRed is going for a fairly standard sort of, you know, they've got their ride chain completed, which is cool. That definitely puts them in a very strong position, and I've been kind of holding down the fort with my grade 2s. I do have my Perfect Guard in my hand, as I mentioned earlier. Now, I think at this point, if I remember correctly, one of the plans that I was going for is I was considering using P-Knight's ability to add some of my triggers back into my deck again, and then replace it with my Perfect Guard. I'm not sure if I actually decided to go through with that or not, but I definitely think that it was something that was running through my mind, because I kind of figured that they were planning on Silent Tomming me, especially considering that they've drawn so many cards in their deck at this point. They've only got 16 left from the looks of things, and they've got a pretty huge hand, so I wouldn't be surprised if they got multiple copies just in case I managed to get rid of their first one. So I was kind of thinking, you know, should I place my Perfect Guard down? Because that would be a good use of it, because by placing it down, that allows me to use P-Knight's ability because I'll have something to replace it with, and that allows me to put some triggers back in my deck. So, you know, I may not be able to Perfect Guard, but maybe I'll be able to reuse a heal trigger or something. you never know. In fact, I can't actually remember whether or not I had any heal triggers in my drop zone at this moment in time, so... But hey, whatever. I'm sure I did whilst I was actually playing the game, otherwise I would have checked. So, my turn, and I kind of need a good draw here. Otherwise, I'm in a pretty unsatisfying position, to say the least. So, they're getting some attacks through, and I'm not getting any triggers. That's a long-running theme. That's actually kind of a theme with the tournament as a whole. Is the thing with Vanguard is a lot of it does heavily rely on triggers, and sometimes you're just not gonna get them. I just don't seem to be pulling the triggers I want to be. So I get Squire, which, you know, pulling a grade 1 whilst you've got a full back row and this late in the game isn't great. You know, you preferably don't want to be running a grade 1 in the front row this late in the game, but Squire kind of lessens the blow because at the very least I can use his ability to replace him with a grade 2 at least. So that's why I attack the rear guard with my Vanguard, so that I can use this ability, because his ability only works when you are attacking the Vanguard successfully too. That's the really important part. Don't rely on just hitting, like you can't just attack it, you have to successfully attack it. So if they perfect guard it, or if you don't have enough power for it to fully go through, it doesn't activate. You have to actually inflict damage upon them for it to do anything. So now they're sending out the Silent Tom, which, let's be real, we expected this. And it basically spells our doom. Because, I mean, we've basically hit that point again, right? We've hit that point again where we're like, well, maybe we'll hit a heal trigger. Which, speaking of hitting heal triggers, they seem to have just done that themselves. So, not great. And again, I don't like blaming it on triggers. And it's not fully triggers. I do think a lot of it is to do with this deck not being the one I'm most familiar with. But man, it does feel pretty frustrating to not get any of the triggers you need. And I'm going to damage check my perfect guard. So yeah, that's not a great game for us, but whatever. We'll see you in the next round to see how things shake out.